Thank you, Michelle, and thanks so much to the Harnessing Creativity team for inviting me here today, and what's a great audience. And I was really warmed by the conversations this morning because it really touches on so much of what the Year of Irish Design is about, and hopefully how we'll be able to really help rural communities throughout Ireland really to use design as an agent of change. What I'm going to do is just very quickly show you an introductory film, which some of you may have seen at the launch and is an online presence, but for those who haven't, it gives a very quick overview about what the year is trying to do as a call to arms. And then I'll have to take about 30 seconds just to get a PDF presentation up, just for the technical issues between the two. So thanks for bearing with me.
They may be just 4 fingers and a thumb, but what we can achieve with them is far greater than the sum of their parts. They help us mull things over, seize opportunities, point out solutions. They can express ideas, scribble them out, turn the page, and start again. They create the spectacular from the ordinary, create beauty where none existed before. '15 is the Year of Irish Design. We have the opportunity to show the world what we can do. We just have to grab onto it. Our future is in our hands.
Okay, so the Year of Irish Design is an initiative which came out of Global Economic Forum in 2013 and I suppose has very rapidly become tangible. We were in a situation of having to develop the programme at great pace and we had, so to some extent, it's a wonderful exercise because it's very much design-led in terms of even how we've had to develop the programme. So we had a very, a traditional fuzzy front end where everything was a little bit up in the air, and then it's been a case of going through, engaging with different stakeholders, really trying to evaluate what was required for the sector and what design could really achieve for Ireland as a whole. Just a little bit of background about myself. I've had the pleasure of being in Ireland now 3 years, and I moved across having spent about 20 years as an academic working mainly in the UK, but also in China and the United States and Canada. And I came over to be head of design at the National College of Art and Design. And then I had the joy of being on the steering committee and having my arm bent by a very persuasive group of people to take on the year. Essentially, Irish Design 2015 is a job creation journey, and it's about exploring, promoting, and celebrating Irish design. It's an all-Ireland initiative, and we're really focused on a whole set of projects which go from the local all the way through to the global. I think the interesting thing often is when we started having conversations initially, people sort of say, well, what is Irish design? And they sort of assume it's a style. And that design is purely about styling. And fundamentally it's not. It's about compelling narratives and telling stories. And it's about making a genuine difference to people's lives. And that's really what the year is focusing on. So when we're showcasing design, we're not trying to sort of wrap something up and say, this is an Irish look, this is like a Scandinavian school. So it's very much, a model for trying to show the breadth of talent we have here. Ireland's uniquely placed, I think. You know, we're on the edge of Europe, we're on the edge of disciplines, and that, to some extent, actually places us now at the centre of international design discourse, because some of the skill sets that we have here are genuinely compelling on a global level, and the response has been fantastic internationally. Just to give you a quick overview about the sort of the programme structure and how we came to devise it, we've got a variety of different audiences, and I'm very conscious that in the audience here we have people from a variety of different backgrounds. So it's about targeting designers, it's about raising their profile at home and abroad, it's about creating vibrant communities of designers and helping designers communicate to different audiences. And we heard earlier today sometimes the difficulties that designers can have in terms of, you know, telling a tale about what they do. It's about businesses, so it's really about how design can help increase sales domestically and internationally. It's design-led innovation, and we have an innovation strategy, but we don't have a design strategy in the state. And one of the key sort of elements with the year is to produce, for the first time ever, a design strategy for Ireland, and produce a white paper. It's interesting in that in 1963, Ireland was at the cutting edge of design policy, and it commissioned the Scandinavian Report, which famously set up Kilkenny design workshops and a whole host of other initiatives. But the key things that it also suggested was that we needed an integrated design strategy, we needed a fully fledged design council, and we needed a year of design to promote Irish design in all its forms. And I'm delighted to say, just over 50 years later, we're doing it. So that's fantastic. It's engaging the public sector, and I think, you know, Martin and some of the other speakers earlier today were talking about the impact design can have, user-centered design, about how we procure, how we help solve policy and service challenges, you know. And one of the aspects about this is it's not just about producing better products, but it's about what design can do for example, transformation within the HSE, and that's key. It's about engaging policymakers. It's getting to a situation now where after 3 months of the year, I'm now having delightful conversations with ministers and departments where they're actually beginning to understand what design is about. That it isn't just whether it looks nice, but it's actually the positive impact it can have economically, socially, and culturally. It's about education, and there was a comment earlier about some of the issues about design education. I moved across, as I say, 3 years ago to work at third-level institutions and run the National College of Art and Design faculty. And one of the real issues is that we don't teach design at second level. We don't teach it at first level. You know, that's a huge problem. And despite all of that, we've got an amazingly vibrant design community. So how can we actually then enhance that? And again, we're going to be addressing a lot of aspects with education initiatives throughout the year and piloting projects, which will hopefully then have a real legacy. And finally, it's about engaging the general public. So helping people benefit from better products and services, and understanding the role and value of design, and celebrating excellence. And last but not least, it's about creating new jobs. One of the key aspects about the initiative is it's being funded not by arts and culture, but by jobs and enterprise, and by foreign affairs and trade. And that's really interesting, because one of the reasons why I was so excited about taking the role on was because it was the opportunity to break out the silo that design has sometimes found itself in, and actually place it at the heart of some of the key issues that we're trying to face. We're taking a very deliberately interdisciplinary approach. So Ernesto Rogers, Richard Rogers' uncle, famously said that you're not a civilization unless you design everything with equal care between spoon and city. And that's a challenge for us to really take on board. We have a set of themes that we're working to. So it's about commercialization, there's an education piece, advocacy, communication, and finally legacy, and very deliberately disruptive reform. And I was really delighted to get that through Jobs and Enterprise as a formal part of the initiative, because it is about disruption as well. And we have a set of platforms, so it's about creativity, and that goes without saying, but we're also focusing the year on key issues about well-being, a sense of place, and sustainability. And finally, we're using a whole variety of different formats, so everything from commissioning work, conferences, through to open studios and parties. And again, people go, parties? This is public money. But what's important is it's about networking. It's about getting the community and yourselves engaged in this situation and making those connections. So the entire intention of the year is about, repositioning Ireland as a design island. And this is going to be part of a journey. We're not going to achieve everything in a year, but we're starting that process. And I think that's the key thing after a 50-year wait. So the general programme structure and philosophy is that we have a national programme, an international programme, and a raising awareness programme. We have a very clear approach that we're blowing up sort of disciplinary silos, and it's about trying to, break down those barriers. Sometimes we have a situation where graphic designers don't speak to product designers, let alone speaking to their clients, let alone speaking to the users of their products or services. And it's about trying to break those barriers down. It's about bringing disciplines and stakeholders together to create platforms for change. It's about embedding design methods into industry. So how the designers engage with participation, observation, using scenarios, role-playing. Designers are fabulous at these sorts of activities, but often they haven't been great about being able to convince the business sector of the value of this approach. And again, we're trying to develop a whole series of case studies which demonstrate the impact of design. It's about promoting discourse and conversation. It's about reimagining structures. This was a piece of design by a Dutch designer who was redesigning the phone. It's gone through Kickstarter crowdfunding. But it's about taking things apart and reimagining how they can be assembled. And to some extent, trying to create a design strategy from scratch is about taking apart all the various elements across that landscape and trying to reassemble it into something fit for purpose. I think design needs to adopt a broader bandwidth, and we often focus on this sort of set of traditional skills. So designers constantly talk about how we can visualize or prototype. It's about materials and manufacture, but there's a whole set of these new skills that we have to engage with. And there's that core element in the middle, which is really about experience. It's the experiential quality that we can try to really enhance. It's moving from an analog into a digital age. And one of the really interesting things within Irish design is we have amazing expertise at both ends of this spectrum. We have this amazing craft tradition, but we're also the new media capital of Europe. And that's it's almost unique, on a global scale. So we've got an awful lot to be proud of, and I think we just need to be sometimes better at singing our own praises. It's about examining roles. I mean, historically, the creative, the designer, a lot of the audience, you'd have been right out on the left field, and sometimes you'd have had to interact through a client and then a user. And what we've got to do is really you need to be placing yourselves at the heart of the action, where you're simultaneously a user, a client, and a creative. You're informing your work through research. You're producing, managing, facilitating, and testing your creative outputs. And again, I think trying to get a really clear sense of design thinking. So one of the challenges, particularly at a business sector, but also at third level, is the fact that we don't often teach design thinking. So if you go to do an MBA at Yale or Harvard or Stanford, you'll do modules in design. We don't do that at Smurfit, we don't do that at any of the other sort of leading institutions, and that's something that we're trying to change through new initiatives throughout the year. Just a few facts and figures about design. And this is some of the stuff that's actually come out of the work that Ruth and Martin have been involved in the past. There are over 400,000 designers practicing in Europe. There's an annual turnover of 36 billion. It's a huge sector. And one of the key messages for the year has been about trying to convince government and policymakers here to really take it seriously. Because we can't not be involved in this. We can't not take advantage and harness the creative skills that we have. And also just that, for every euro invested in design, it translates into increases in net operating profits and turnover and exports. So I've got a set of sort of key objectives for the year, and this is the hard bit, is it's quantifying it as well as qualifying what we're doing. So we have to create job creation, exports, and increase competitiveness. And this is a scary set of metrics that I have to, and the team have to deliver on. So just to give you a sense, it's about SME engagement, it's the development of the sector, it's promoting the sector, and it's about legacy. But in a sense, that's great, because I think designers actually like working to a brief, and we've got a very clear brief that we have to hit. And I'll take you through some of the sort of targets and how we're going to do that later. The key thing is that we're trying to showcase and support all design disciplines, and that's the range that we're dealing with. And I'm delighted to say that we're supporting initiatives in every single sector represented there. What I would say is we still have some areas which are which in some senses need additional support. So we have a round of funding currently that's live, and we're very clearly trying to encourage applications in some of these areas and also in some regions. And you'll be pleased to know that Leitrim is an area which we would like to support more. So have a chat with me and we can try and sort of see how we can help later on. It's about creating a design network. So if Ireland's going to become a design-led island, we're looking at creating design cities, design hubs, projects, communities, partnerships, and it's really about engaging you and me and the wider community into this activity. And people are listening. We pitched a notion of Dublin being a world design hub, and they said yes, and that's fantastic, So we're going to be, International Associated Designers. It's going to be a key sort of event. We'll have a design summit, which I hope you'll all be able to attend in October later this year. We have an online platform and program, and if you're not signed up to our sort of bulletins, then please do. We can't send stuff out unsolicited, but we've got over 10,000 people now registered, and we're sending material out on a weekly basis. So I'm just going to really just go through the three sort of structures: the national programme, the international programme, and then some of the raising awareness initiatives. The key thing, as I said earlier, was that we really wanted to engage the community in a broader way as possible. And what was really important is that this didn't come across as a top-down initiative, that we were trying to support grassroots projects. So we have this Design Innovation Fund, which was set up, and we really asked to try to support things like networks, conferences, talks, publications, design residencies, a whole tranche of opportunities there. And that's the sort of regional breakdown. We've funded over 120 projects. 2/3 are outside Dublin, you'll be pleased to know. And what we're trying to do now is, as I say, is trying to sort of engage those. Just everybody always wants transparency, and I think it's really important. So they're the sort of figures in terms of the application numbers that we received. You can see some areas had really high hit rates, other areas didn't. But we're really keen to receive more applications from Leitrim and the sort of border counties, but also specifically in certain disciplines. So please do look at that and get in touch. We're doing a whole series of exhibitions and events, and I think sometimes this can be seen as being quite sort of, sometimes, quite indulgent. People say, well, this is, why are you going to try and showcase the best of Irish design internationally or nationally? And I think, there's a demand for it, and it's about getting people to understand that value and impact. So the first exhibition we curated, we had the pleasure of working with Barbara Osgoby, who is sort of a leading product design consultancy. And this was the first show in Dublin Castle. We have that as a design hub for the year. And this was the first show, I suppose, of contemporary design, an international practice. So it had Irish products alongside international products, but we weren't you know, the remit for the curators was pick the very best of manufacturing, rather than just trying to showcase Irish products. And I was delighted that we had a good range of material. But what was fantastic with that was it's a brand new venue, and in the first month we had 15,000 visitors, which is just phenomenal for a sort of a venue from scratch. And this really does reinforce the need and the opportunity for a national design centre and a programme of exhibitions and events which can then be available to tour the regions. And that's one of the key legacy elements of the year. We're also promoting a whole series of craft disciplines in conjunction with the Solomon Gallery. And we had a show of the best of Irish ceramics, and we've currently got a show of Irish glass, so please go and view. We've got a show that kick-started at National Craft Gallery in Kilkenny and is now going to be touring the regions, so it's going to Cork, Limerick, and hopefully Belfast. And this was about trying to promote emerging talent, so maybe 5 years out of study. Portfolio, which maybe the craft sector have been particularly focused on over many years, has been a wonderful initiative. We've tried to enhance that, and it has a broader bandwidth this year. And again, that's going to be that just opens tonight. I'm going to miss the opening to be here. It's okay. I'd much rather be here talking to you guys. Next week we have Hidden Heroes, which is an exhibition that we've developed in conjunction with Vitra Design Museum in Germany. It's one of the key cultural providers of design and exhibitions globally. So that opens. We're also trying to, I suppose, build on some of the expertise and status that other Irish sectors have been able to produce. And I think something like Ball Beer and the success of Origin Green and the notion of actually, you know, the sort of the quality of produce here is something in terms of trying to promote new disciplines such as food design and actually being in a situation where Ireland can try to lead the way in some of those areas. So we've got an exhibition opening shortly called Appetite for Design, and that looks at everything from produce to product, from, you know, interior to packaging. And it's a lens to, you know, food is the lens to explore that. And we're working very closely with a whole set of experiential designers there and top chefs. We're bringing over an exhibition to National Print Museum that then tour, and this will go into 2016, which is the year of celebration, looking at posters of protest and revolution. And finally, as part of the World Design Hub, we've got a major sort of international design awards exhibition and summit and conference. And the final exhibition, which will be opening St Andrews. So those of you who have ever been to what was the tourist centre on Suffolk Street, just round the corner from Grafton Street, and where Molly Malone has been relocated, the intention is that this becomes the new National Design Centre, which will host conference facilities, exhibition facilities, resource centre, incubator units for the design sector, and we want to then have regional initiatives based off that. We're supporting a whole series of conferences and events, and probably the most important one was trying to subvert some of the big conferences that are happening. And I was saying over lunch, we were delighted when we had the opportunity when IBEC came to us. And those of you maybe from Northern Ireland who aren't aware of IBEC, it's equivalent to CBI. We were invited to sort of, you know, would we have a speaker at their conference? And we said, well, could we hijack the conference, and could the conference all be about design? And could we demonstrate the impact of design to the top 300 CEOs for the day? You know, be open web Taoiseach and everything else. And it was a fabulous event. And it's funny because, you know, when people walked in, we did a sort of, you know, a survey of how many of the companies use design at the beginning of the day. And it was about 26% who recognised that they were using design of the top 300 companies in Ireland. And then the end of the day, how many might use it? Oh, about 80%. And he thought, well, there you go. That's a positive result. The key thing now is we have to deliver that, and I think the sector have to step up to those opportunities. So sometimes it's about talking to different audiences. Sometimes it's just about designers talking to designers, and we don't do that enough. But we supported Offset, and for those of you who've had the pleasure of going, it's a fabulous occasion, and we have over 2,500 designers at the Borgas Theatre for 3 days, all talking about design and only talking to each other in a really bizarre language and getting really excited about kerning and typography. But it's fabulous. So again, that was a great sort of event. And I think, we want to try and do more of those situations. Sometimes it's about creating opportunities for communities to speak across disciplines, and sometimes it's about letting communities within disciplines actually speak to each other. And again, we're doing a lot of design-led initiatives around major sort of festivals. So this was St. Patrick's Festival. There's a whole set of architectural installations. One of the things that's maybe closest to heart is, and as part of the All Ireland initiative, is that the library card is one of the things that you can use both sides of the border. And so we are supporting so far over 24 events at local libraries. I think libraries are often the very heart of a community, so we're supporting a whole set of activities in that context. So, for example, there was an event up in Lisbon looking at Frank Partridge, who's the inventor of the defibrillator, and there's a whole set of things. So it's really about engaging local communities, kids, families, and the general public as a whole. So that's a lot of showcasing. We're also doing a lot of enterprise initiatives, and these are really key pilot projects. So historically, Enterprise Ireland haven't had any case studies or material about the impact of design, the value of design, and we haven't had specific projects focused on trying to engage SMEs and micro businesses in what design can do for them. So we're doing a whole set of stuff. So we're supporting a whole set of sectoral and regional design networks. We've got a pilot project called Incorporate, which is going to be working with SMEs and micro businesses on a variety of different projects to support things. We've got a whole new design startup initiative with significant funding behind that and opportunities to hopefully really make an impact on 5 selected firms. We've developed a tourism app. We're going to have a new business-to-business platform, which we're developing with IBM, which will basically be a situation where if you want to identify somebody to do a graphic design job for you, or make a network, or how do you get this manufactured or made, this app will basically provide you with that information. And hopefully that's a key legacy component. And finally, there's going to be the establishment of a series of design excellence centres, and particularly the ones I'm pleased with are things like trying to help the rebirth of Water for Glass and the wider community there, and also the textile sector in North Inner City Dublin, where there's an amazing pattern cutting tradition. And I was just saying over lunch that we've probably got 5 years to save this sector across the country, because the average technician, an experienced, skilled technician, is 50 plus. So if we don't create a scaffolding and try and ensure apprenticeship models, we'll lose these skills permanently, and that'd be tragic. So again, it's trying to sort of engage those aspects. We've got a series of education initiatives. So we're developing a toolkit for entrepreneurial skills for third level to really address some of the big problems in design education. I know Martin and I had a conversation last night about that, and we're passionate about that. We're also introducing a brand new initiative called Design Ed into second level, which will be rolled out nationally for a new toolkit and design program there. We have a set of design masterclasses. We're bringing over some really big names from around the world and to speak in Ireland, and depending on size of venues, we're trying to do that on a regional basis as best we can. We're also trying to inject a little bit of design into the STEM agenda and working with Science Foundation Ireland on a series of projects. And finally, we've supported design research. So if there are any design academics in the room, just to say that there's going to be the first Irish Design Research Journal and set of sort of initiatives around that. The deadline is today, I think, at 5 o'clock. So if you haven't got your abstract in, it's probably too late. So that's what we're doing at home, and this is what we're doing internationally. You're starting to maybe get the sense of just how big this is. I suppose, you know, we're a small island at the edge of Europe, but we've got this remarkable global reach because of the diaspora that was mentioned earlier. And it's this fabulous collaborative network. We couldn't actually have designed a better network to be able to engage with things. And one of the fabulous things is we're saying, right, well, we want to have a fashion show in Paris. Well, how are we going to do that? It's really difficult. And you get on the phone and you suddenly realise that the guy who's just set up the Louis Vuitton museum designed by Frank Gehry in Paris, he's an Irishman. So we're sort of everywhere in a good sense. And I'm delighted to start saying, even with this accent, I'm now saying we, which is great. So we're doing a whole set of showcasing designers at trade fairs for the first time. So we had a show called The Weathering, which kicked off our international program in Beijing, and Michael D. Higgins, the president, who's our patron, opened this. And this was great because it was the backdrop for major trade negotiations. And I think what's important is actually trying to place design at the heart of that and use it as a platform. Yes, it's a cultural platform, but it's also an economic platform. And I think, you know, we should just be so proud of the quality of designers and makers and creatives that we have here. Showcase, and I know there was a very good showing from designers from this region at Showcase. And again, we tried to support that in new ways. We created a shop which is going to tour and, you know, a series of fashion events associated with that. And we also had a sort of Bald Beer sponsored dinner where we took key influencers and sort of wined and dined them. We had a presence for the first time ever at Maison Objet, which is probably the largest design retail trade show in the world. With over 400,000 visitors, and that was the first presence that Ireland had ever had. We're going to be at London Design Festival and at New York Now in August. And then we've also got a whole series of exhibitions and events internationally, which are maybe more culturally focused. So we showed for the first time ever in February 8 young designers, fashion designers, at a show called In the Fold. And again, what was so heartening was the fact that we have the talent. So normally there's a 3-year waiting list to show at this show. So you have to apply, then you put in the holding pen, which is like being in Hall Z at the back of the RDS. Nobody knows where it is. And then you get to show. And we're able to like bypass all of that and jump straight to the top level. And we've got an amazing response. And when you've got, you know, you've got the creative director from Vogue walking around saying, I'm astonished at the quality, it just shows that this is worthwhile. This is a worthwhile exercise because we have amazing talent. And really what we want to try and do is not see them always lost to London or beyond, you know. Yes, sometimes you might have to travel internationally, but we then want to be able to reshore some of the manufacturing back here. So there's some examples of some of the work with Roy Parnell on the right, who will probably be the next J.W. Anderson, and Simone Rocha. We had a show called Second Skin at London City Hall, and one of the big things is that we're going to be launching the Global Irish Design Challenge on the 16th of April, which is the opening at Milan. And this is going to be an opportunity for the design diaspora across the globe to create speculative ideas about what Ireland could and should be. And that will then be part of the 2016 celebrations. The project that I suppose is giving me most pleasure at the moment, but also panic, is the fact that we're going to be showing at Milan Design Week again for the first time ever in April. And the interesting thing with this show is that we're very deliberately trying to show that Irish design is in a state of liminality. It's not a threshold. And what's really interesting about the show is that we took the very brave decision that we said that we're not the finished article. So we're not going there and waving some brand building exercise saying we're the best. What we're saying is we're part of, we're starting this journey and we're going to show the process and we're going to engage the audience in that process. So we've paired a number of different designers and manufacturers together, and we're going to be exhibiting the process as it evolves over 4 different international venues before it then tours internationally to venues such as V&A and MoMA. So that goes to New York and then Dutch Design Week. We're also just negotiating having a major installation and presence at London Design Festival. This was the big installation last year, and we're going to be having a presence there. What's fantastic is the fact that we're able to start to leverage some of those opportunities. So, for example, at London Festival of Architecture, we're going to be creating 3 pavilions that will then have a whole series of events throughout the month. And the whole festival, London Festival of Architecture, the theme for this year is Ireland, which is great. And then we'll be going to Chicago and finally on to Hong Kong, Shenzhen. And what's great is these are young practices that are working and based in rural communities as well as urban communities across Ireland. We have a capsule exhibition that's been developed in conjunction with Foreign Affairs and Trade, which is really based on the idea of what can fit in a diplomatic bag and a set of sort of packing cases. And again, the idea is that that will then tour internationally to over 30 different embassies and consulates, but also then around the region. So I hope that the doc may be able to find a space for some of these activities later in the year. We're also really keen to try and promote international trade. So we've got a trade fund. We've had the first round, but the second round's coming in the summer. And for those of you who have businesses and you're keen to internationalise, we'll be very excited to be able to welcome applications in those areas. And really, again, there's a whole training program behind that as well to really try and prepare the designers to make that jump. Then, obviously, the final piece is really about raising awareness. So, we've got a nice, vibrant sort of press and social media coverage, and lots of people tweeting and engaging with that. But probably the most tangible thing for most people, and I was really pleased when people said that when they flew into Dublin, this is what they saw, was that we managed to convince, for those of you, there used to be the Faces of Ireland. They've all gone, and now it's design. So DAA have very kindly given us about £2.5 million worth of, or euros worth of sponsorship, sort of, I suppose, press space to be able to showcase the very best of Irish design. We've also developed a tourism app, and this hopefully will really make an impact for design-led tourism. We've done this in conjunction with IBM. And the idea is that you'll be able to, it's a sort of peer review process. And I know for a fact that we have a number of different venues and destinations in Leitrim that will be featured on this. And we'll also be wanting, if there are any things we've missed out or people recommend, whether it's a fabulous design experience in a restaurant or anything else, we'd love to get those applications through. And again, hopefully that will really help stimulate the tourism sector. So I suppose the whole thing really is about a legacy. This is a 2-year project. We're a year in. We have essentially to the end of this year, and then we have to sort of just really sort of justify some of the figures at governmental level and embed some of those key pilot projects into ongoing initiatives. So the important thing, I suppose, is sectoral engagement. So one of the vital things is trying to get these different communities to speak to each other. And actually, it's one of the interesting things is that we've had situations where, say, for example, in digital communications, getting the IDI, ICAD, IP, and these people in the room together, they were like, we've never done this before. And you think, what do you mean? I mean, you've never got in a room and spoken about, like, your sector? No. So what we're trying to do, again, is build these connections and really get people to engage in that. And what's fantastic, again, is all the sort of other things that are spinning out of that. As I say, we have a big design tourism strategy and a lot of promotional activities. And again, it's really trying to shift the notion of how Ireland is sometimes represented internationally. We've got a whole host of design partners. That's just some who have sort of signed up and engaged in that. And what's been great is that they've not just brought financial support, but they've brought benefit in kind and enormous leverage in terms of some of the other projects that we've been involved with. So the legacy really is about designing growth. So the metric objectives that we have to hit are, in the medium term, we have to create 1,800 jobs. And that's you know, an ask. It's a big ask, but it's doable. 200 new companies, 300 SMEs at trade missions and shows, 10 million increase in exports. Our raising awareness activities have to reach an audience globally of over 3 million. And finally, 50 SMEs will undertake design training, micro businesses. And the structural legacy is the creation of a National Design Centre, a baseline research audit. So for the first time ever, we'll be able to measure and demonstrate the scale of the creative industries within Ireland and the island of Ireland. And finally, a white paper for government, for a design strategy for government. One of the key things really is moving in terms of this design ladder. The diagram on the left is sort of an adaptation of a Danish design centre's sort of very well-established model, and again, that was touched on earlier today. But it really is about us moving from a situation where, you know, design is about discrete problems, and it is getting into a situation where it's a core part of everything we do. So fundamentally, the year is about creating the scaffolding for future growth. It's a creative stage and platform for you, and really, I hope that you feel that you can become part of this and own this. It's very much, you know, the whole basis of this is about trying to design it from a grassroots level up. So please do get engaged and involved. It's your year of design. It's about the transformation of the creative industries and really trying to rethink what we do and why we do it. And essentially, the year is about trying to become design becomes a permanent, evolving agent of change for government, industry, education, and the public sector. So, I suppose just to wrap up, ID 2015 represents a pivotal chapter in Irish design. It's going to explore, identify, and present our creativity and how designers, companies, manufacturers, and our society as a whole is moving across these boundaries and limits of what design was into what design can become. Thank you very much.